So it was brought to my attention that Rolling Stone made this list of the top 200 singers of all time. Now, obviously, you're not going to see me go through the whole list, so I will link it in the description below so you can see all 200 that they had on their list. Basically, what I did was I looked at the list and I kind of picked out some that were interesting to me that I wanted to talk about, whether I do agree with or don't agree with, or maybe I think that people are saying they shouldn't be on here but don't understand why they're on there for a certain reason. Like, I just want to give my take, my opinion on it, because I think another reason I don't want to go through the whole thing either is when I looked through, I didn't know all 200 of those singers. So with the ones that I didn't know, I can't talk about because I know nothing about their work, and it would just be way too much to go and try to check things out from the ones that I didn't know. So without further ado, I think the first one that caught my eye was actually the second one on the list at number 199, Glenn Danzig. Now, listen, he's got a unique singing style, and I will say, back in the day, he was definitely decent for the type of music he was making. But one thing this list didn't take into effect was longevity, and I feel like over the years his voice has deteriorated. Like, I think some of the best singers you can talk about, they've been able to, keep their voice going at a high level. They've taken care of their voice. But Glenn Danzig isn't one of those people. Like, I agree he was good back then, but kind of now it's like, yeah, I don't know. I feel like there's other people that you can put in the spot. Like, one that surprised me that wasn't on this list was Paul Stanley of Kiss. Again, say what you want about him, but back then, the guy could sing. It wasn't until around the early 2000s where his voice really started to blow out. I would have put Paul Stanley on this list before I put Glenn Danzig, but that might just be me. Then, right in front of Glenn Danzig at number 198, we have Billie Eilish. Now, this one's a little bit newer. I think she's only been doing, music since like 2016 or something like that, so she hasn't been around super long, and her voice is pretty unique in a way. I feel like, or at least I feel like it was back when she first started. Now there's a lot of copycats out there that try to, copy her singing style and whatever. And I know that people's main complaint is she uses a lot of wub-wubs on her voice, this, that, and the other. There are some songs where she definitely, sings without the auto-tune and shit, and it works very well. But even when she does sing with the auto-tune and stuff, I don't see it as that bad. There's definitely some songs that feel annoying and whatever, but I feel like 198 is the perfect position for her, because looking down the line, I don't think we're ever going to see her as one of the best, but I feel like when we're talking about newer generation, she definitely fits where she's at right now at number 198. Then going down a little bit, we have number 194. I really feel like Kelly Clarkson, who is 194 on this list, gets a little bit underrated at times. Am I a fan of hers? No, but I mean, she's one of those ones that even now, going into her 40s, has kept her voice pretty well in check. I don't really think it's been declining. I think it's been, not necessarily the same. I feel like she's gotten better as the years have gone on too. I really think that nobody really talks about her voice and how good it actually is. Like, it's kind of disappointing in some ways. So I would say Kelly Clarkson deserves to be a little higher on this list. Maybe like top 100. Maybe like at the lowest I'll say like 80, and at the highest I'll say 100. I do feel like she's definitely higher than 194. Then at 185 we have Alicia Keys. Look, whether you think she's an industry plant or not, her voice is amazing. I don't care what anybody says. 185, I think, again, is kind of perfect for her, but she's made some fantastic songs, and her voice has really led the way in those songs. So you know what? I'm here to say that whether she's an industry plant or not, she can fucking wail, that's for sure. Then at 176, we have Iggy Pop. Now, this one is interesting because he's kind of one of those singers that was around during the punk era where everything was like the vocals always sounded kind of like nasty, like you were like trying to like hawk up something a little bit almost. And it's been kind of replicated as the years go on. And he was really the only like punk artist that I saw on here. And in my mind, I'm like, if you're gonna include Iggy Pop on here, then what about some of the other historical like pop punk artists, like maybe say that of Billy Joe Armstrong? I can tell you, having seen Green Day in concert as recently as 2021, that Billy Joe Armstrong's voice is still doing very well and fine after all of these years. And Iggy Pop, had a lot of drug issues, so that could have, been the reason why his voice isn't as good as it once was. But I guess he did kind of pave the way when it came to punk like that, even though there was already, punk bands and punk artists before him that were kind of, singing to the melody and stuff that he was singing at. I feel like he really, originated it, and it made people, not necessarily try to replicate it, but bounce off of it and try to do their own thing with it. But 176... I don't know if I'd rank him ahead of Alicia Keys and Kelly Clarkson. I don't know. I feel like he should be lower, but he definitely belongs on this list for the reason that he's kind of historic in starting that. Then we go down to number 175, Lana Del Rey. I guess. I mean, her voice isn't bad, but I don't see it as one of the best either. I think it's just kind of in the okay tier. If we were doing a tier list, she'd go right in the okay. There's just some songs that, I am in awe at how she's able to sing, and then there's some other songs where I'm like, why is she singing like that? So I think it's more of just the inconsistency for me, where I'm kind of like, I don't even know if Lana Del Rey needs to be on this list. At 170, Chris Stapleton. This one's interesting too, because he's not your typical country singer where he sings like this and he's like yeehaw, He does a lot of blues rock as well, and he does it extremely well, I think. Again, I don't know if I'd have him at 170 on the list, but he definitely deserves to be on here for the way that he kind of, isn't making the same bland, generic pop country that we've been hearing on the radio for years. He's kind of, sticking to his guts, more, like I said, bluesy, bluegrassy, and still having country mixed in, and his voice just works so well with it that I think, yeah, I do agree that Chris Stapleton should definitely be on this list for that reason. Go down 2 spots at 168, we have Debbie Harry. She should definitely be higher. She should probably be top 30. When it comes to Blondie and Debbie Harry, you gotta realize when Blondie started, they were kind of early rendition of what punk used to be, and then they released something like Heart of Glass and they became more of a pop rock band. But Debbie Harry's vocals were always so on point with what she was doing, and I feel again, paved the way for a lot of the, female-led bands and whatnot. So, yeah, Debbie Harry definitely deserves to be on this list, but way higher than 168. Then at 165, we have Ronnie James Dio. You have this man ranked way too low. How is he not top 5? That's all I have to say. Even though I wasn't the biggest, or am not really the biggest Ronnie James Dio fan, especially when it comes to his Black Sabbath days, I can say, for a metal musician, the man's got a voice, and he was able to hold it up for so long until his tragic passing. So Ronnie James Dio at 165 is way, way too low. You gotta move him up at least 160 spots, because even if you're not a metal fan, you know who this guy is, and if you can be in a genre that not many people listen to and be well known, then you know you've done something right. And his vocals, his voice, is the reason that you pretty much know who he is, because he was fantastic. Then at 158, we have Carrie Underwood. I mean, obviously she's I think she was the first person to win American Idol, and it's always been interesting with her, because I think mainly what I've grown to know from her is she does me being a football fan, she does the Sunday Night Football theme for NBC, so that's really all I see her do nowadays. And of course, back when I was little, there was, Before He Cheats and all this stuff. Her vocals are fine, I guess. Again, she can belt when she needs to, but I don't think I know a whole lot about her to really say that she's in the right or wrong position. I know enough, but I never really went oh, she can sing, absolutely, positively well. I think she's good at singing, but again, I don't know. Maybe there's, an album where she just was, singing her heart out, and I didn't hear it. I don't know, but, 158... I guess is fine. Then we go down to one spot at number 157 with Robert Smith of The Cure. He's interesting because, again, when you look at it, you wouldn't say from a musician standpoint that he would be a terrific singer, but he was really the one that originated the sound of the gothic kind of pop that The Cure is known for. So again, I think it's more historical factor, and I think 157 is just right for him. You can probably move him up a little bit on the list, but again, he's not perfect, but for the genre that he kind of paved the way for and was a part of, it fits very well. Then at 152, we have Michael Stipe. His pronunciation of some words is definitely a little bit awkward, but I will say this. When he sings, he does it with emotion. If he wants you to have fun on a song like The End of the World, he'll sing his heart out and you'll feel like you're having fun dancing. But if he wants you to feel like sad and upset, like on a song like Everybody Hurts, he can definitely show that emotion there too. So again, this is an example of a guy who's not perfect, but the way he uses his voice is definitely, I think, way underlooked when you think about it. Michael Stipe can, make you feel happy, he can make you feel sad, and when you can do both, I think that's kind of a win, whether you're seen as a great singer or not. At 141, we have Christina Aguilera. Again, I think she's a little too low. You might want to pop her up in the top 20. I mean, she's amazing. I mean, you look at songs like Dirty and Genie to bottom, you're kind of like, but, then you listen to songs like, what's it called, Beautiful, and all this stuff, and you just get to hear the heart from her. Like, I just feel like as she got older, her voice got better almost, and, considering all of what she went through early on in her career, that definitely says a lot, and she's taken really good care of her voice. So again, even though I wouldn't say I'm like the biggest Christina Aguilera fan, I can get down to a lot of her songs because her voice carries most of them. Then right after Christina Aguilera at 140, we have Bono. No. Just no. I don't see the appeal of Bono. I don't really see him as a fantastic singer. To me, he probably would have been better on not being here. But, U2's a big band, so I guess I can't be too surprised. But Bono, no. Then at 136, we have Lauryn Hill. This was a woman who could mix soul with rap and do it so well. Again, she's one of those artists that, seems to be kind of like a blip in history, but she had one of the best-selling rap albums of the 90s, I believe it was, and when you listen to her stuff, it's just so soulful, and so, like, the storytelling on it is great, and yeah, I think she deserves to be on this list, but again, maybe a little higher than 136. At 134, we're kind of going back to my point with Glenn Danzig about being able to sustain your voice. Axl Rose is here, and if it was the 80s or mid-90s, sure, I guess, but like nowadays, no, you hear him live and it's gotten worse, and even with the new songs that they recently did release, it's just kind of, that pop isn't there anymore, that grittiness isn't there anymore, and again, that probably has a lot to do with the drugs and shit, but at the same point in time, there have been people, musicians, singers, who have done a lot of drugs and have been able to rebound and keep their voice healthy, and Axl Rose just hasn't done that. It's like one person I didn't see on here that's pretty much in the same boat as Axl Rose is Vince Neil. Back in the 80s and 90s, he was a terrific singer, but once you start getting to the 2000s, it definitely starts to go downhill a lot. So, yeah, when it comes to longevity and Axl Rose, I would probably push him down further on the list because I feel like that's a disgrace to others that have actually, kept their voice intact and have done the job to continue to even get better as they age down the line. Like this man right here, Rob Halford, 129? Are you kidding me? This guy's in top 10 too. Listen to the Judas Priest album that came out a year ago. He's in his 70s now, and he's still hitting those high notes, still rocking out. It's like he hasn't lost a beat at all. So this is definitely way too low for this man because he's just one of those ones that, like, everybody knows. Again, if you're not a heavy metal fan, you know Judas Priest, you know Rob Halford because of his fantastic voice, and I don't see why you wouldn't put him ahead of some of the others that we're going to be talking about. Like John Fogerty, for example. Look, John Fogerty here at 118 is fine because, again, the type of music that he made was definitely, the way to go. It was very rough, very gritty and all that kind of stuff, and I guess he just worked with what his vocals could do. But at the same point in time, I don't see them as, fantastic. I feel like more often than not, when the bandmates would, sing like backing vocals with him and the instrumentation was really good, that to me is what carried a lot of Creedence Clearwater Revival songs, not necessarily John Fogerty. So a lot of you might be mad at that. I'm not talking down about John Fogerty as a musician. I think he's a great musician, but when it comes to 118, there's definitely a lot of people that we just talked about that he should not be ahead of. Ooh, you all are gonna hate me on 112, but let's be honest with ourselves. Is Ozzy really that great of a singer? I mean, like, okay, alright, I get it. You know what? Heavy metal vocalist, metal, rock, whatever you want to call him, fine. He does his job. But to me, when it comes to technique and whatnot, it's always the same with him, and I don't really think he's like reinventing the wheel or has had people reinvent the wheel when it comes to the way his voice works. He should definitely be lower on this list. I still think he should be here for the sheer fact of, being able to bring heavy metal into the mainstream and being so well known. Like, his voice is so distinct that you could pick it out of the crowd. But at the same point in time, it comes with, like you're going to see with a couple of these other people on this list here. It's usually the genre that they do that makes their voice fit better, but other than that, you wouldn't necessarily take them as a great singer in general, and to me, Ozzy's one of them. The Weeknd at 110. Sure, I don't have a problem with this. I think he's at least right where he needs to be. Definitely a couple people that we've already talked about that I would put ahead of him, but, he can sing pretty well. I mean, listen to his albums and you'll see and understand where I'm coming from. 105, Eddie Vedder. Let's talk about this. People always talk about, Eddie Vedder, like that kind of thing, like almost like Creed with Scott Stapp. At least, Eddie Vedder did it first before Scott Stapp. But that was like early Pearl Jam. If you listen to Pearl Jam now, he definitely has learned to sing more melodic without the growliness in his voice. And that's why I think I'm happy to see him on this list, because had it still been the same thing that he was doing back then, I don't necessarily know if I would be like, yeah, he's not a great of a singer, but as his voice over the years has transitioned, it's become better, and we start to realize that, yeah, he can sing. Like, he's not going to sing like super high notes or anything, but with the music that he makes now, it just seems to fit. It gets punky at times, it gets funky and whatnot, and Eddie Vedder was just one of those ones that kind of changed his vocals for the better in a way, if we're talking here. So even though his voice is memed a lot, most people don't really know Pearl Jam outside of their early stuff. So I would definitely recommend from like 2006 to like now listening to that type of Pearl Jam stuff, because you'll see he's actually very talented as a vocalist. 102, Taylor Swift. I can't say I disagree. I mean, she's got a good voice. Sometimes she doesn't use it right, like in the song Look What You Made Me Do, or Blank Space, but in other songs, I think she uses it very well. I think her Folklore and Evermore album, she did fine. Even her country stuff doesn't get on my nerves, or at least her country vocals don't get on my nerves. So, yeah, you know what? Fine. She deserves to be on here. Am I a Taylor Swift fan? No, but I'm not going to sit here and say she's a bad singer, because she's really not. She's good. Elton John at number 100. Yeah, Elton John's good too. I wouldn't put him at like one of the best to ever live, but, again, I think for what he does with his music and all that, it works well, so that's really all I can say. Elton John to me has always kind of been a little overrated, but still good nonetheless. Usher at 97. This is interesting, because like The Weeknd, he's an R&B artist, but Usher was around for like the late 80s, early 90s kind of R&B, and you gotta think too, he started when he was a teenager, so his voice has definitely over the years, he hit puberty at some point, and I think everybody looks back at songs like Yeah and Burn and Oh My God or Oh My Gosh, I think is the song title, because they couldn't put Oh My God on the radio for some reason. He's another one that I think is fine too. Again, I think there's people better than him on this list that deserve to be higher and above him, but I can't say that Usher's not a great singer, because he really is. I mean, he is one of the definitive artists of the early to late 90s and early 2000s R&B. He hung around for a while, and for good reason. Stevie Nicks comes in at number 93. Yeah, I mean, her time at Fleetwood Mac, it was another one where her voice was, I think, distinct from others at the time, and yeah, again, I think a little bit overrated, but again, not too overrated, if you get my drift with it. Like, she's fine. 93, I think, is fine position for her. Here's one I thought would be higher. It surprised me when I saw him on here. That's Michael Jackson at 86, and I think he should at least be top 40. Definitely. There's definitely things about his vocals, like the he-he's and shamoans that get annoying at time, but the dude can sing. He can. There's no doubt about it. He had been doing it since he was a kid, up until his tragic death, and the talent's there. The talent really is there. So the fact that he was this low for me, and for someone being so historic and his voice never really, becoming shot at any point in time, it's kind of like, I thought he would be higher here. Right after Michael Jackson at 85, Johnny Cash. See, here's where this is weird to me. I don't know how you can put Johnny Cash ahead of Michael Jackson. Again, Johnny Cash, very distinctive voice, and for the type of music he didn't necessarily sing more than he just kind of spoke. A lot of his music was spoken word and this kind of stuff. Did he sing on tracks? Yes, he did. But, when people think Johnny Cash and the way he sings, they always go back to like songs like Walk the Line or Ring of Fire, where he's not necessarily singing, more just kind of, talking in this case. And definitely shouldn't be over Michael Jackson or others on here. Again, if I were to put him here, I'd probably put him at like 190 or something. Like, he deserves to be on here, but 85... it's a little too high, if we're being honest here. I mean, most Johnny Cash fans would even probably agree with me on that. 83, Amy Winehouse. This is another one that I don't think gets enough attention. She did die young, part of the 27 Club, but, I mean, she had a voice. She really, really did. Now, putting her here at 83, I think is the right way to go, because, again, her career was kind of short because of her untimely death. But she definitely deserves to be on here just because, again, at the time, she had that unique, distinct voice that you could pick out of a crowd. It didn't sound like anybody else at the time. It was kind of like, she had her own thing going, and that I can really respect. 82, we have Steve Perry. I'm sorry, no. I don't know what it is about Journey, but I guess they're not for me. I don't know. Maybe it's because every year the teachers would do this lip sync battle at my school when I was in high school, and the song they always finished off with was Don't Stop Believing by Journey. So I guess maybe that song just got real annoying to me, but now every time I hear Steve Perry, I cringe, because it just, I don't know, he just doesn't sound good to me. And say what you want, but he probably should be on this list, but I wouldn't put him at 82 by far. I'd put him way down, probably at 200 if I had to pick personally. But, to each his own, I guess. And number 80, Chris Cornell. This man should be top 20. If you disagree with me, well then you haven't heard all of Chris Cornell's stuff, from Soundgarden to his solo stuff to Audioslave. Amazing. If he wanted to growl and be loud, he can do that. If he wanted to be sensual and calming, he could do that. Like, he just was able to just sing his heart out and do it with emotion, and that is something that I don't think people really, really look at, because he comes from that grunge era. He's probably thrown into the parts of like, oh, these are what grunge vocals are supposed to sound like, because trust me, he definitely deserved better when it came to what he did as a vocalist and his recognition that he doesn't necessarily fully get for it. As a matter of fact, as you'll see later, Kurt Cobain is on this list and not Scott Weiland. I don't have a problem with Kurt Cobain's vocals, but there's no way you can tell me that Kurt Cobain is better than Chris Cornell and Scott Weiland, because Scott Weiland was another one of those ones that later down the line kind of got rid of the growliness of his voice and started to use his singing voice more, and it was excellent. So the fact that Scott Weiland wasn't even on here, and that Kurt Cobain is ranked ahead Chris Cornell, I don't know, that's kind of disrespectful to me, just because one was more popular than the other. At 78, we have Janis Joplin. You know what? There was no one who can sing more uglier and more just like she had like a sore throat than Janis Joplin could. Is that an insult? No. I'm saying that she had the voice that she had, she took advantage of it, and she made some powerful songs with it. Number 68, Rihanna. Yeah, I guess. A lot of her early stuff especially. Not that work song she did with Drake, definitely not. I don't think that shows off her talent, but yeah, there's definitely songs of her early catalog that I feel can definitely back up her being a good singer, but 68, I don't know, maybe in the 90s. 63, Robert Plant. This is another guy who's kept his voice going very, very well throughout the years. Again, he had that distinct sound with Led Zeppelin back in the day, and I still think that he's been able to keep it going as the years go on. So 63, though, again, I feel like maybe he should be top 15 just because he was definitely ahead of his time, I should say, and deserves recognition for making it okay to be, I guess, more loud when it came to singing and stuff like that in rock. Kind of, again, Led Zeppelin creating the metal genre along with Black Sabbath. 58, Lady Gaga. 58. That should be top 10. I get it. There's songs like Love Game and all these other songs where her voice may feel a little bit underwhelming or annoying, especially a lot like on her art pop era. My God, I don't know how you can't play Bad Romance or even, A Million Reasons and Shallow and say that she can't sing, because she can. Now granted, this list is saying she's one of the best of all time, but this is way too low. I mean, the generation she popped up in, she was definitely one of the best singers. And keep in mind, this was around the time where Britney was still there, but not as active because of things going on. And others like Christina Aguilera were kind of, dealing with a lot of shit. So she was like the new in trend. And after she kind of got rid of the whole shock value kind of thing that she was doing early on and started showing off more of her vocals, you can definitely see that she is a talented singer. 52, Mick Jagger. Nope. Should not be on this list. He should not be ahead of Lady Gaga. He should not be ahead of Robert Plant, or Chris Cornell, or Christina Aguilera, or Kelly Clarkson, or who else have we had on this list? The Weeknd, Lauryn Hill. He should not be ahead of any of these people, or even on this list at all. Again, he just made music that I guess fit what he did. Other than that, I can't say I like the way he sings. He sings like this and he goes, oh, all the time. So it's like, I know he doesn't go, oh, all the time, but like, it just, I don't know, his lips just really get on my nerves with the way he sings. It looks like he's a chicken in a man's body, and it just, I don't know, it doesn't work well for me. Here it is, what I told you about, 36, Kurt Cobain. How you have him almost 50 spots ahead of Chris Cornell, I do not know. Now, I think Kurt Cobain belongs on this list, because was he one of the prettiest singers out there? No. When he was told to get vocal lessons, he laughed in that person's face and never got vocal lessons. He was in the grunge, obviously, genre, where vocals weren't necessarily the top priority. But he did well in being able to make dark songs with the vocals that he had, and sometimes he would scream his heart out while doing it. Again, he's very historic and he belongs here, but I feel like since he was in the more popular band, it's kind of unfair that you would put him this high over someone who definitely does have immense vocal talent, like Chris Cornell, or even, like I said, I would maybe even think about putting Scott Weiland in this position over him. But, Kurt Cobain, not saying he doesn't deserve to be here, just saying that a little overrated in my point. 34, Tom York. Yeah. I mean, his high notes can be a little bit annoying at times, but they don't get too on your nerves, I guess. I mean, he's interesting, I feel, considering Radiohead has done so many different things throughout their albums that, it definitely has shown what Tom York can do in one way or another. So, yeah, again, maybe I'd have him more in like the 50s, but I'm not upset with him at 34. This could definitely be the right placement. David Bowie at 32. Oh, you all are going to hate me, but, no, this is way too high. Maybe the 90s for David Bowie. I don't, like, he's fine, he's talented, but again, there's so many people on this list that I would put ahead of him, and some people that aren't on this list that I would put ahead of him. He's just a talented musician overall, and again, made the music that fit his voice, but 32, that's pushing it. 27, Dolly Parton. Again, how is she not at least top 20 here? I feel like they're definitely underrating her here, because I watched the Miley Cyrus Dolly Parton New Year's Eve thing, and she was still singing and doing a great job of it. And again, she's one of those people that over the years has really been able to keep her voice going, and I don't think she gets enough love now as she did back then. She still gets enough love. Like, everybody knows at least one Dolly Parton song, but from what she's been able to do, and she's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame now, so I think she deserves more credit here than 27. She is still very, very talented, despite her being a lot older. 26, Paul McCartney. Yeah, again, I would probably leave him off the list. Beatles were interesting. John Lennon was an okay singer. Paul McCartney, I guess, is okay. And then you got guys like George Harrison, where I guess, had more talent than people gave him credit for. Ringo, I don't know too many Ringo Starr songs, so I guess I can't really tell you there, but The Beatles, to me, were just so good at making music and coming up with ideas that I think their vocals were like second fiddle a lot of the time. I don't know. I mean, Paul McCartney's great and all, but vocal-wise, especially at 26, I don't know about that one. 22, Adele. Yes, I do agree. Maybe a tad bit higher, but, you know, at least she's this high into the top 30. I feel like when it comes to my generation, which, you know, grew up with her in the late 2000s into now, she was young when she started, she's older now, and to me it seems like her voice just keeps getting better and better every time she releases something. So yes, I think Adele definitely deserves to be on this list because she's been able to do what she's been doing for so long, and to keep her voice healthy has been so impressive, considering the way she does sing a lot of the time, which is very high. Frank Sinatra at number 19. Yeah, you know, I feel like his was more simplistic. Like, a lot of people can definitely replicate it. Seth MacFarlane replicates it all the time when he does singing and stuff. Yeah, I bet you didn't know Seth MacFarlane could sing. He's actually pretty good at it. And Brendan Urie, you know, did it for Panic at the Disco for a short bit of time on an album like Death of a Bachelor and stuff. So yeah, Frank Sinatra, I feel like, you know, he was one of the, I think, first early, like, definitive singers during that time. Very, very, very popular, and again, very talented. So yeah, I can't argue this. 17, Elvis Presley. I would flip Sinatra and Presley, and I would even probably push Presley back even further. Don't get me wrong, again, I like Elvis, but as time went on, it kind of got worse for him, and I know he did gain some weight down the line, and he did die at a young age, but, you know, I think everybody got annoyed with that kind of like kind of thing. Like, it just, I don't know, it seemed very, very just annoying to me the way he sung sometimes, but, you know, he has moments, I guess, and I guess since he's, again, one of the more historical, putting him up this high isn't surprising, but I probably would put him somewhere in the mid-40s. Bob Dylan at 15. I know you guys want me to disagree with this so hard, because I've said in the past before, Bob Dylan is a terrible singer. But you know what? The reason I think he's right where he needs to be here at number 15, despite being a terrible singer, the man knows how to work his voice around an instrument. It can be incoherent at some point in times, but there's other people on this list where they can be incoherent at points too, and yet they weren't complaining about that. Bob Dylan is one of those ones where, you know, you're so fascinated with his musicianship that, again, his vocals are kind of second tier when it comes to his songs a lot of the time. And, you know, he definitely deserves to be in the spot for being able to take instruments and make them work with the voice that he had. So yes, he's a terrible singer, but with what he was able to do, I feel like the praise that he gets is more well-deserved. So for those of you that wanted me to, like, crap on this and be like, why is he even on here at all? He's a terrible singer. Just think of what he had around him and what he used to make his music so great, other than his voice. 14, Freddie Mercury. Actually surprised he wasn't top 3, but yeah, I mean, the guy's a natural. Again, very distinct voice. Like, you can just point out when it's a Queen song at any point in time, because he just had that, I guess you can say, peppy pizzazz to his voice, and yeah, never really deteriorated. I mean, I guess that last Queen album he was on, but he was sick, so you kind of give him a pass at that point in time. But other than that, he was always one that was just very talented and always made for a great show, because he would work the crowd so well. Then at 12, John Lennon. We just talked about this. I would probably have him somewhere in the 70s. Like, he's good, but I don't see him as fantastic. I think it's just more the ideas he had music-wise were definitely better than the vocals, which were basically second fiddle to a lot of Beatles stuff there. So, you know, I think he's way too high on here. And I would even argue to say that, you know, as a musician, I would say 12 is fine, but as a vocalist, he might not even deserve to be on this list either. At number 5, Mariah Carey. Yeah, sure. I mean, she is definitely fantastic listening to her older stuff. Nowadays, she doesn't sing as well as she did. She still sings well, but I think number 5 is fine because, you know, she's fantastic. She can still hit high notes and, you know, do her thing. Like I said, not as good as she once did, but she can still do it. And then number 2 is Whitney Houston. You know what? When we get to number 1, I would probably put Whitney Houston there over the number 1 pick, but that's just me. Either way, number 2, Whitney Houston, I'm glad she's this high, because again, there was songs like her I Will Always Love You cover where she can just belt out, and then there was other times where she just needed to get dancey and feel good and, you know, get funky, and she can do that as well. I think she always had an act for knowing what to do with her voice and when to use her certain vocals that she had, and she was talented at doing all of it, and up until her death she was still thriving with it. So yeah, Whitney Houston at number 2 is no surprise here. And then at number 1 we have Aretha Franklin. Now again, me saying I would flip her and Whitney Houston isn't me saying that Aretha Franklin doesn't deserve this spot, because I'm only pushing her back 1 slot as opposed to others where I would say I would push back like multiple spots even off this list. But I mean, when it comes to soul and R&B, especially when it comes to, you know, female-led soul and R&B, where would it be now without Aretha Franklin? Like, it's just, she was just fantastic, and she was so well loved and so talented, just being able to sing her heart out in anything she performs. So, you know, her being at number 1, I think is actually pretty cool. Again, you know, 1 and 2 could flip around, but at number 1, I can't be upset with this. Like, when I looked at number 1, I said, alright, how's this number 1 pick gonna piss me off, because it's probably someone that doesn't deserve to be here. But, you know, I was highly surprised when they put her here, because I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, this actually is a pretty nice pick. I do definitely agree with this here. So yeah, it ended on a high note, but overall this list was just weird and unusual with some things. Like I said, I didn't go through all of them because there was singers on there that I didn't know anything about or didn't know enough about to really judge them. These were just the ones that I think I knew about and they caught my eye in some place. But you know, I feel like this list isn't as bad as people make it out to be, because you gotta think, even some of the people that we see as like not great singers, you gotta understand why they're on this list and what they were able to do with their vocals around the music that they played. So, is it a bad list? Some places, yeah, I can admit that, but it's not as terrible as people make it out to be. I mean, this is Rolling Stone, so of course they're gonna go with the more, like, I guess you can say, not necessarily mainstream, but the more, like, you know, known ones over others that people may not know as well as others. But yeah, there's definitely some missing from this list. Like, not a lot from, like, the days of, like, pop punk and stuff like that. Like, I feel like Patrick Stump and Brendan Urie definitely get stumped on here. Haley Williams, Amy Lee, I feel like those two definitely deserve to be on here for what they've been able to do. And others, like I said, like Scott Weiland and Paul Stanley, I feel like definitely deserve to be on here somewhere, you know, even if it is the high 180s or 190s. I feel like they did so much to define their genre, and with Scott Weiland, he was able to change his vocals up so quick and well that the fact that he isn't getting any recognition at all from this list is kind of disappointing. But yeah, I would recommend you go and taking a look at the whole list in itself, just to kind of, you know, see what they had going on there and whatnot. And maybe there's some artists on there that I don't know that you know that you'll either agree with or disagree with when it comes to placement on the list. But yeah, that's it for me. Thank you to the person who brought this to my attention. You know who you are, and I will catch you all in the next one.